All right, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Eric Seleznow with Jobs for the Future. I'm Senior Advisor of our Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. I see there's still plenty of people still logging on. The numbers are flipping quickly on my screen, so I'll talk slow so people can still keep joining us. Thanks for making the time today to join us for our Essentials of a High-Quality Pre-Apprenticeship Program. This is a very important topic in the world of apprenticeship these days, and let me spend a minute talking about what we're going to be doing today and why we're doing it today. Well, let me get some introductions out of the way first, and then I'll tell you why. Hi, I'm Eric Seleznow, as you can see. I've seen better pictures of me, but that's going to have to do. And I'm calling in from our DC office. JFF is headquartered in Boston. We have offices in DC and Oakland, and I'm in the DC office, where it's a nice fall day today, except for this awful cold I have, so please forgive me for that. That's me. I'll be some of your facilitator today, and I'm going to be joined by several other guests and people participating today. So let me tell you a little bit about JFF. Next slide, please. Many of you know us. Some of you don't. We've been around for about 35 years. We're a large national nonprofit that works at the intersection of education, training, and workforce. And we believe in transforming our nation's workforce and education systems to accelerate advancement for all. Next slide, please, Rachel. I lead our Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning, and we launched the center about 2.5 years ago, and the purpose of the center is really to drive the advancement of apprenticeship across the country. We feel the need to provide resources to the field, capacity building, training and technical assistance to help state and local organizations and agencies, employers, community-based organizations, and other stakeholders advance their apprenticeship strategies. You know, apprenticeship has been on the move in this country for about the last 5 years. Probably wouldn't have had this webinar 5 or 6 years ago. A lot of investment, a lot of interest. And so JFF, who's been in this space for 35 years, and we helped in the youth apprenticeship in the early 90s and elsewhere, but we do a lot of work in the work-based learning space. It was a logical next move for us to develop our Center for Apprenticeship, where we want to be a center for learning, technical assistance, and capacity building. Next slide, please. So we're recording this webinar. We'll send it out to you in email, so if you want to share it with your team or your staff or your friends, or put it on your annual Christmas card, that's fine with us. So we're recording that. We'll send that around. Everybody should be muted, and we'll be doing some question and answer towards the end of this. I better talk fast so we have time for you to do that. So we're going to have some Q&A, and we ask that you send them in the Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many of those questions as we can today. And I have them, and we'll get back to you on questions we can't answer online today. So it's there. Super. What I want to, well, I'll hold on that thought. So we're going to talk about a high-quality peer apprenticeship. Deborah Kobus, my colleague and deputy director of the center, is going to walk us through some work on the characteristics of a high-quality apprenticeship program. We built that on top of some of DOL's guidance, made that a little bit more clear, and with some important information about quality pre-apprenticeships. We've got a couple of guests that we'll get to in a minute, Jennifer Oddo with IBM and Eric Ramsay, the Director of Apprenticeship for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and then we'll do some Q&A. But one of the things that motivates me so much on apprenticeship, and you can go to the next slide if you like. Rachel, thank you very much. One of the things that motivates me, and I've been in workforce a long time, I'm an old guy, right? And so our workforce highway is littered with over the last 30 years in this country with a lot of really mediocre so-called pre-apprenticeship programs. I've been around in my entire career, as many of you have. They've been a little bit of GED, a little bit of life skills, a little bit of contextual learning, and they often never led to an apprenticeship or had limited. I mean, there are some good ones out there, don't get me wrong, but I think, as I said, our workforce highway really has not a great track record of pre-apprenticeship programs, although I do know a number of good ones out there. So what we wanted to do in this day where registered apprenticeship is such a hot topic, an important topic, is how to create pathways for people to enter into those apprenticeships, whether you're a student, whether you're a young person who's out of school and out of work or disconnected, or if you're an adult who's changing careers or dislocated, how do you change careers and get the pathway into the benefits of a registered apprenticeship program, which, are excellent wages, average of $60,000 to $70,000 a year per DOL, completion rates of apprenticeship programs that are exceptionally high, higher than many community colleges and other programs. And one of the kickers on apprenticeship that gets me is the 94% retention rate over a year, that once apprentices continue in their apprenticeship, they continue in their jobs. And that's a really big and important part for employers. So, pre-apprenticeship programs are training initiatives that are designed to prepare participants to enter, succeed in registered apprenticeships. And we're going to focus on registered apprenticeships today because that's the focus of a lot of our work. We can talk about other types of apprenticeships in which pre-apprenticeships can lead to, and that's fine. I think our sort of gold standard point on this is that we want to prepare people to the entry-level requirements for either registered or non-registered apprenticeship programs that are also high-quality programs. So that preparation that leads people to an entry point. Pre-apprenticeship is like pre-game, right? You warm up pre-game to get you ready for the game. You warm up pre-apprenticeship to get you ready for an apprenticeship. So pre-apprenticeship in itself should not be a standalone effort. We do a pre-apprenticeship and then say, see you later. It's better than nothing, of course, but, we want to create the pathway, which is something that's very important to us at JFF. So let me introduce our guest for today. Jennifer Oddo is a program manager with IBM's external workforce and apprenticeship initiatives. Jen's no stranger to the talent development and HR system. She's been in it for many years, both as an employee and as a consultant and trainer in this space. And at this point, she leads IBM's work for advocacy, education, and enablement of strategic initiatives, working with community colleges and industry partners. She also chairs the Consumer Technology Association's Apprenticeship Coalition, which is a pretty big deal, where she serves as a chair on that. And she's part of the team that launches IBM's apprenticeship programs, which are growing very, very fast. Jen, welcome. I'll come back to you in a second. I want to also introduce Eric Ramsay, who's joining us today. Eric is the Director of Apprenticeship and Training with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He's the head man in apprenticeship in Pennsylvania, so he's responsible for all the registered apprenticeship activities, increasing the number of apprentices, educating uninformed folks about the merits of apprenticeship, and expanding into non-traditional areas of pre-apprenticeship. So, I love that Eric on his bio says it takes a village to help maintain a healthy workforce system, and I couldn't agree more. Jen, just real quickly, just a few thoughts very quickly on, maybe for 30 seconds or so, your thoughts on the value of pre-apprenticeship in today's world of work and apprenticeship, and then I'll turn it over to Deborah to guide you through some more work. Jen?
Great. Thank you, Eric, and thank you for having me here today. And, why is apprenticeship important and why is it important to IBM? And I think first, Eric and everyone, to understand why it's important, we first have to understand the emerging trends are really impacting our ability to find talent. There are currently 700,000 open IT jobs, right, but universities are only producing about 10% of that talent needed to fill those jobs. So not only do we not have enough talent to meet the demands of our industry, but we also believe that 100% of jobs will eventually change due to artificial intelligence. MIT, IBM Watson AI Labs just recently released a groundbreaking research on AI and the future of work. And that research shows that while most of the jobs will change as new technologies such as AI scale, the research shows few jobs will actually disappear. What is fundamentally changing, though, is the way we work. IBM's apprenticeship program is a great example of how we are changing the way we work to address that skills gap issue. We launched our program in 2017, and we now have over 450 apprentices in or through our program. And we are seeing the direct impact that work-based learning programs bring, and pre-apprenticeship is an important phase on that learning continuum to ensure that everyone has opportunity and access regardless of their educational pathway. And I recently read, there's another report I want to call attention to because I think it's a great piece of work that the Brookings Institution just released. And those authors did a great job at really validating the need and importance of pre-apprenticeship and stating that economies grow when they develop and deploy their people in ways that maximize their productive potential. And I think that's so important to the conversation because pre-apprenticeship is really about bringing that inclusive workforce into the conversation and ultimately creating inclusive solutions to the work that we do.
That's a great point, Jen.
So, now with the skills now at the center of the labor market, we now know that modernized work-based learning programs like apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship are absolutely critical to the future success of IBM stakeholders and the communities we serve.
Wow. It's really great to hear. So sort of, again, reduces the misunderstanding that apprenticeships are just for the building trades. If IBM is now has over 400. Pretty impressive out there. All right, folks, mute yourself if you're not muted already. I want to go to my friend Eric Ramsay on the Commonwealth at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, directs the apprenticeship program there. Eric, we know the value of registered apprenticeship. You work on that every day, but let's talk just for a second or two about pre-apprenticeship, why that's important to you in Pennsylvania, and we'll have a longer conversation later, but why that's important to you in Pennsylvania and part of your overall workforce strategy.
Right, Eric, and as you mentioned, as we started out, it was all about registered apprenticeship and how do we build these registered apprenticeship programs for employers. But as we went and talked to the different employers, they were really concerned about creating that talent pipeline. How do we get the talent in the door? Apprenticeship kind of sets up the framework for that training, but what is the real mechanism to get the talent in the door? And pre-apprenticeship for us, how we viewed it was it's an intentional and deliberate connection between employers and training providers to create a sustainable talent pipeline for the present and the future. Employers are generally concerned with the now, but through pre-apprenticeship and connecting with some of the career and technical centers or the VOTEC schools, the high schools, community-based organizations, we can also start developing that pipeline for the future as well.
All right. Well, that's great. That's a great entry, and we'll come back to you in a little bit and revisit that, Eric. But from a state strategy that's sort of looking at the inclusiveness and getting people pathways in the door, I think a lot of states are starting to think about that. All right. So moving along, I am happily going to hand this off to my cohort, my partner in crime, Deborah Kobus. Deborah is the Deputy Director of our Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning. She helps keep me straight on many things, and she focuses on all things apprenticeship. She has great interest in diversity and inclusion and developing strategies and tactics to advance that. So I'm going to turn that over to Deborah to walk through the framework that we've developed and to guide you a little bit through that. So Deborah Kobus, welcome to today's webinar.
Great, thank you. Happy to be here and happy to see so much interest in pre-apprenticeship. We really think that pre-apprenticeship is a critical way to advance more pathways into apprenticeship programs and to open the talent pipeline. So it's great to see that there are folks from all over the country who are interested in that as well. We can go to the next slide. And I will say that as I was listening to the other panelists and sort of kicking things off, I've been spying a little bit on who the attendees are. And so it's great actually to see where everybody's coming from because it reflects the first thing that we'd really like to make clear about pre-apprenticeship, which is that all different kinds of organizations can deliver pre-apprenticeship programs. They're flexible in their design. An ideal pre-apprenticeship program brings together a lot of these different partners, and so any one of these many different types of organizations can serve as the lead. I'd also like to note, I'll call out just a couple of organizations that I saw represented on the phone. I know there are many other strong ones, but those of you who logged in early, it's great to have Oregon Tradeswomen on the line, and 1199C, and I saw some really leading high school districts as well. So I'd just like to note that in addition to folks who are on hoping to learn, there are already so many great pre-apprenticeship programs out there and represented here that have really shaped JFF's thinking about pre-apprenticeship. So thank you all for your leadership in the field. Next slide. So the first thing that we really wanted to explore in setting up a framework to think about pre-apprenticeship is being really clear on what we're actually seeking to achieve through a pre-apprenticeship program. And the first thing, which Eric mentioned, is really creating that direct link to an apprenticeship program. So the apprenticeship system is excellent. It offers a lot of benefits to those people who are able to enter an apprenticeship, but we've seen that the registered apprenticeship system continues to struggle with issues of diversity and inclusion. And often many apprenticeships are very competitive to get into. And so those who don't already have the ability to demonstrate the relevant technical skills or other experience might not be able to make that first step into an apprenticeship program. And a pre-apprenticeship program can provide that bridge and then in turn can be used to increase the diversity and equity throughout the apprenticeship system. The roles of a pre-apprenticeship program are around that preparation to the apprenticeship, and we think of that fairly broadly. So yes, it is providing the technical skills and instruction, but it's also thinking about some career exploration and what are the things that you need to know about the apprenticeship system and about the particular apprenticeship programs that you might be interested in order to make the next step. It could also be support with doing things like getting a high school diploma or other sort of credentials and other sort of transportation or other needs that you need in order to be able to succeed in an apprenticeship program. Next slide. So in light of that, JFF recently released this high-quality pre-apprenticeship framework, and it is an attempt to really learn from the best of the pre-apprenticeship programs out there, as well as to recognize the leadership of the Department of Labor that has already provided some guidance as well at a very high level on the elements that they look for to identify quality in a pre-apprenticeship program. The idea of having a framework is that we know that all of you that are out there have different goals, different populations that you're working with, different sort of constraints that you're working within. And so you need flexibility in exactly what your program design looks like. But at the same time, we can identify some of those core elements that are still markers for quality regardless of the specifics of your program design. Next slide. And so we have identified 6 key characteristics for those of you who are familiar with the DOL guidance. The 2nd through 6th characteristics will look fairly familiar to you. They fairly closely align with DOL's guidance. And then the first one, transparent entry and success requirements, was an element that we really wanted to elevate and call out specifically. So for the next little bit, I think you probably want to hear what this actually looks like and feels like rather than having me talk at an abstract level. So we'll spend about 15 minutes where I'll briefly introduce each of these elements and then turn to Jennifer to actually provide some real insight into what this looks like for IBM in practice and why each of these elements are important or how they're expressed in a real pre-apprenticeship program. So next slide. Starting with transparent entry and success requirements, one of the things that we have found in both moving from a pre-apprenticeship to an apprenticeship program and sort of at other key junctures along a career pathway is that it's not always clear what you need to actually do in order to enter or succeed in an opportunity. And so a pre-apprenticeship is a place to be clear about not only what you need to enter and succeed in the program itself, but to make sure that you don't have any unexpected barriers. So you go through a pre-apprenticeship program, you think you've gained all the skills that you need, and then you find that there's something preventing you from advancing to the next state. And this sense of just clarity and transparency in general is an important value for those who might not be as familiar with any of the apprenticeship opportunities that exist out there. And so it makes the apprenticeship system actually a sort of more welcoming place. So with that, Jennifer, I'd love to turn it over to you and have you speak to sort of what this means for you and for IBM.
Thank you. You know, in apprenticeship, I like to say that we hire for aptitude and knowledge, and we train for skill. But one of the things that we're mindful of in apprenticeship is that there's a whole population of talent out there. I like to call them my treasure chest of talent, that they don't have the knowledge. They may have the aptitude, they may have the appetite, but they're missing that key piece of knowledge because they haven't been given the opportunity to get into an educational pathway. So when we talk about what we are looking for in pre-apprenticeship, it's as simple as that. It's appetite, it's aptitude, and it's the learning agility. And so putting those ingredients together and putting candidates through an assessment test, and JFF, I have to commend you for the work that you've done on the assessment. If you all haven't gone out to see the toolkit they put together on the assessment strategies and tools that are out there, I encourage you all to do that. And so, you know, it's really being able to put these individuals through an assessment, one, to help them understand that, wow, I do have the aptitude to do this job. They may have never thought of that before. And this assessment, and these assessments that are out there could also help them understand, do they have the learning agility to do it? And right, this is about building confidence. As we tap into a more inclusive and diverse demographic, we need to show them early confidence that they can do the job. And so that is one of the strategies we are implementing, is using these assessments to really help them build that early confidence that, yes, they can do the job. And once they get through that piece of it, then, you know, we are putting them, you know, through these training programs so that they can prove to us and demonstrate that learning agility.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful, and thanks for the plug. The next slide, please. So I really appreciate that you mentioned assessment, not just for the technical skills, but also for that interest. And one of the things that we hear a lot about is, you know, what does it mean when we say that we're looking for particular skills? I've heard some employers say, you know, just give me someone with the soft skills who shows up to work on time, you know, who's reliable, who can work on a team, and I can teach them the technical skills. Other employers really have work environments where you have to have a baseline of technical skills, both to contribute as well as to sort of not be a risk to the employer's business itself. And then others do look to specific academic credentials, whether it's a high school degree or something more advanced, that they use as a sort of common signal or expectation within their field. And so it's really important for a pre-apprenticeship to look across those different types of skills and credentials and think about how they can design a program that integrates those skills and sets people up not just for sort of one opportunity, but that provide the participants with the range of skills they need to be able to enter different occupations. So again, Jennifer, to turn to you, how does IBM think about this different mix of skills and the role of a pre-apprenticeship in setting folks on the right pathway to skills?
Well, if you recall, I mentioned in that MIT IBM Watson AI Lab report, what fundamentally is changing is the way we work. And to build on that, Forbes just also recently published an article in the past few weeks about the emerging skills that are going to be needed in Industry 4.0. And these soft skills play a very critical piece in all of this. And I often have managers tell me that they've selected if they have two candidates of equal technical skills, they will always choose the candidate who has the strong soft skills. You know, the ability to be creative thinkers, critical thinking, teamwork, that collaboration, those are going to be the new ways of working that are really going to drive the innovation and the growth that we are looking for in our industries. So when we look at soft skills, very important. The technical skills, this is why pre-apprenticeship is so important, because in our apprenticeship program, we have proven that you can take somebody who may only have the aptitude and teach them the technical skills. In our apprenticeship program at IBM, we have everything from an 18-year-old P-Tech student to a 59-year-old baby boomer. We have significant number of career changers in our program who did not have the technical experience, but they had the aptitude and the appetite to learn. We put them through the training program, and not only did they earn the skills needed, but they've earned important industry credentials along the way. So in standing up a pre-apprenticeship program, having elements that are going to teach those soft skills, the foundational technical skills, and what's more important, what is very important, is teaching them those industry credentials and giving them the ability to earn those industry credentials, I should say, along the journey.
Great, thank you. That's a really helpful sort of set of considerations and a perfect segue into the next slide, which is really capturing that skills gain through industry recognized credentials. And one of the benefits that we see in industry recognized credentials is that that's a way to help ensure that a program is portable. So companies that may not have heard of your particular pre-apprenticeship program might recognize the credentials that you are equipping people with. And so it creates this sort of currency in the labor market that's beneficial to participants who either want to enter directly into a job or who want to use that as a bridge to their next stage of training, such as an apprenticeship. And then also this allows people to start to be in a series of potentially stackable credentialing and have the ability to really build on what they've gained through the pre-apprenticeship program. So Jennifer, I don't know if there was more that you wanted to say on industry recognized credentials?
I do, because industry credentials to me are one of the most important elements of any quality program, whether it's a pre-apprenticeship program or an apprenticeship program. And for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, earning credentials during the learning experience is going to help build confidence with that learner. And think about, our focus is on really tapping into diverse and inclusive populations. So having a tool where they can build confidence along their journey is really going to be critical to help increase the retention of them staying into these programs. Secondly, it's important for them when they come out of the programs, because now they have recognized credentials that are, to your point, are portable, they could be stackable, but it shows demonstration and validation that they've earned a key skill that's needed in the industry.
Great, thank
you. Some of the things that we have credentials around at IBM: Agile, design thinking, our new collar professional skills. In design and professional skills, by the way, we have badges that you can earn for free at IBM.com. In addition, we credential our technical skills. So in essence, when you think of our program, we're credentialing, the ways of working, the ways of thinking, the ways we interact, and the ways we innovate with the technical skills credentials.
Great, thank you so much. And so in addition to how those skills are recognized through a credential, we also, next slide please, think a lot about how that learning happens. So probably not a surprise to many people on this webinar, but as the Center for Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning, we really value the idea of incorporating work-based learning as much as possible into a pre-apprenticeship program. So the Department of Labor has focused primarily on hands-on activities, and we think it's great to introduce that kind of experiential learning into a classroom or a lab whenever possible. But even more than that, we think that really high-quality pre-apprenticeship programs can gain from having the learning actually happen on a work site. There are a couple of things that having that kind of work integration in a pre-apprenticeship program achieves. One is just that there's certain learning that's easier to do in a workplace. You learn about the workplace culture, what it feels like to interact with a supervisor, how to work on a, sort of on a team in the workplace in a way that's really difficult to replicate in a classroom. In addition to that, it actually exposes employers and workplaces and companies to the pre-apprentices themselves. And that helps then create a bridge to the next step where employers can see for themselves that these students are really learning and that they're ready to take the next step for a longer term role in their company. So Jennifer, again, I'll turn it back to you to see, how this looks for IBM.
Now, again, it's just reinforcing the message. When individuals are coming into an apprenticeship program, we are expecting them to have a little bit of knowledge, but what we also recognize is that they need to have learning to meet them where they're at. We have a lot of diversity coming in, meaning we have community college students coming into our program. We have those who are career changers, have maybe taken some continuing education classes. We have veterans coming into the program. So really being able to meet that student where they're at in their learning journey is very important, and having a flexible approach is very critical to the process. Combined that classroom or online experience, we also have found it's important to give them a safe, judgment-free zone where they can go in and practice their newfound skills, whether that's through a skills lab, interactive courses. That is going to continue to help them to build the confidence. And you'll hear me talk about this confidence a lot because that is something that I think is critical in every step of the learning journey, especially as we start tapping into those populations that may not have an advanced degree. So I've spoken to our apprenticeship program, but the parallels are same in any training program. And as we get into pre-apprenticeship, they may not be getting as robust of an experience, because to distinguish the two, pre-apprenticeship does not have a hiring commitment behind it, whereas apprenticeship is a hiring commitment where these individuals are learning and earning on the job. So when building a pre-apprenticeship program, while an employer hiring relationship is not required, we really do strongly encourage that employers need to be engaged, whether it's through providing projects and providing shadowing experiences, getting internal employees involved to be mentors to help support the learning experience. All of those elements are really key ingredients when we think about how we teach new skills at IBM.
Thanks so much. And I think that's a great point, that not all work-based learning has to be the sort of level of intensity as an apprenticeship program. Having job shadowing experiences or sort of mini internships that last a couple weeks are the kinds of things that might be easier to integrate into a pre-apprenticeship program, or a brief rotation across a number of different work sites. So next slide. And I am sensitive to time here. I want to make sure we leave time for the other great parts of this webinar. So I'll kind of speed through this, and happy to follow up in questions. But mostly I'll just briefly introduce these last couple of elements for Jennifer to react to. So one great aspect of high-quality pre-apprenticeship programs is creating that wraparound support, so that an apprentice has all of the sort of holistic support that they need to be able to succeed in their training program. And pre-apprenticeship programs often access a wide range of supportive services that can really help a pre-apprentice and then apprentice thrive. So Jennifer?
Now, and just to concur with everything you've said here, there are a lot of the organizations out there that we partner with, whether it be a community college, a community-based organization, that these wraparound services are really important and very critical to the success of the apprentice. And oftentimes having somebody on the outside, like a community college, who can help develop some of these and offer some of these support services makes a little of it creates a warm environment for them as they come into the employment environment.
Great, thank you. And next slide. So finally, the last but not least element of a high-quality pre-apprenticeship program is actually thinking about what comes next. So as Eric mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, there have long been a lot of sort of standalone pre-apprenticeship programs, and that becomes a challenge when people actually try to look to what's next and there's no clear opportunity. So being a pre-apprenticeship, we particularly value that ability to transition into a registered apprenticeship program and encourage a direct relationship with an apprenticeship program, not necessarily direct entry, but an opportunity for an interview, for potentially for advanced standing, any number of ways that a registered apprenticeship can create a clear next step. we also recognize that not everybody wants to go on to an apprenticeship. And so also having opportunities for a clear next step into either further education or training or into an entry-level job in the labor market also help the full range of program graduates. So with that, I will turn it to Jennifer.
No, and just in closing, I think these pre-apprenticeship programs are so important because they are you think about all the training that's consumable and all the training that's available to anybody interested, right? And what's great about pre-apprenticeship is that it has a direct link to an employability outcome. And I think that is a key distinction around pre-apprenticeship programs compared to maybe some other training programs that are out there, is that linkage. And at the end of the day, the reason we are doing these training programs is to drive those employability outcomes for those who may not have opportunity and access.
Great, thank you. That's, I think, a great note to end on. So with that, I will turn it back to Eric and the other Eric.
Wow, that's the Eric and Eric show. Well, that last sentence was, we got to quote that and put it on a plaque in our office. It was a great statement, Jennifer Oddo from IBM. So thank you so much. You know, the interesting thing as I was listening to Jennifer speaking is, if she was from the building trades, if she was from manufacturing, if she was from healthcare, it's the same sort of issues. It's not different because IBM is an IT related company, because I'm sure a lot of your apprenticeship projects are in many different occupations, but it's the implications of what that means to any company or any industry that's trying to create a pipeline of workers. I should also say that, pre-apprenticeship is a term we're using for this, but there's friends of ours in the building trades who are calling it apprenticeship readiness, and other folks are calling it apprenticeship readiness as a sort of label to not confuse folks. So there's a lot of ways to talk about this pre-work, this preparation work, and this bridge work. I don't care what we call it, as long as it's connecting people on a pathway to especially high-quality apprenticeship programs. So let me turn to my friend Eric Ramsay from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Eric and Eric Show. And Eric, it's a really interesting time in apprenticeship, and it really has been for a long time. And so I know states, the Federal Office of Apprenticeship and states are looking at these things differently with the investment and funds that are coming in. Governors, I know your governor has taken a great interest in apprenticeship. You guys are running a state grant program as well. You're doing a lot of things. But tell us about your efforts to sort of how you've leaned into pre-apprenticeship and why you've leaned into it, and what you're trying to do in the pre-apprenticeship space as a state director in a state apprenticeship agency.
Yeah, so in about early 2017, the office has only been around since 2016, although my experience goes back for about 21 years now on the compliance side of apprenticeship. Going around talking to employers, we realized that, yes, building the registered apprenticeship programs is fine, but they really were looking for a way to really have an intentional pipeline to get talent in the door. So we said to ourselves that pre-apprenticeship is the way that we wanted to do this. And so we went down the path of, really looking to some of our other states that have established pre-apprenticeship programs, registered pre-apprenticeship programs, which isn't very common. But we went to talk to Massachusetts, Wisconsin, to see what they had in terms of standards of pre-apprenticeship, because just like registered apprenticeship, we'd like some standards for our pre-apprenticeship program. So we looked, we vetted it through some stakeholders, in our apprenticeship community, and ultimately we presented it to our apprenticeship council, had them look at the process, got their feedback, so it went through a couple different iterations, and finally we did get approval from our Apprenticeship and Training Council in late 2017 to have a registered pre-apprenticeship system in Pennsylvania. That process, once the applications come in, those standards come in to us, I approve them as a state director. And what we're experiencing since that, late fall of 2017, think now we have around 31 registered pre-apprenticeship programs. And they're in all different industries. And, just like you mentioned before, apprenticeship is something that was kind of made popular by the building trades, but all the different industries are now kind of realizing that apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship is a model that works in any industry. That's kind of the efforts that we're going to get it going in PA so far. We're definitely not done, but that's what we've gone through so far.
So are you so as in registered apprenticeship, for our guests who may not be totally familiar with the registration process, they complete standards and a certain amount of paperwork and employer agreements and acceptances and curriculum and competencies and all that they have to get approved at the state level. And it has meaning if the state approves that and they've scanned it and screened it for quality. So it's the same sort of thinking. I would imagine these 31 pre-apprenticeship programs, and that's a lot for a short period of time, are looking to say, look, we want to raise the bar on pre-apprenticeships. We want to have it organized, structured. We want it to have meaning. And I suppose that's what's driving them. And do all of these pre-apprenticeships articulate or lead to a registered program? Is that the philosophy behind what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so our philosophy was that in pre-apprenticeship, there had to be three pillars of the registered pre-apprenticeship process. And number one is it has to be connected to a registered apprenticeship program.
Right.
Ultimately, employment once this training is complete. Secondly is that the curriculum that's taught at the pre-apprenticeship program articulates up to the registered apprenticeship program, because we don't want someone duplicating training that they may have received in their pre-apprenticeship program. And thirdly, there has to be a pathway to employment. It doesn't mean that necessarily you have to employ these folks that have all gone through the pre-apprenticeship program, but there does have to be a pathway to employment. Whether it's job shadowing, whether it's co-op, whether it's intern, some type of employer engagement strategy that is involved in it. And all of the programs, all 31 of our programs have to have those components spelled out for them to become registered.
Wow, that's really great. I mean, that really does raise the bar on that pre-apprenticeship strategy. And are you noticing, and I don't know if you have any data yet, but is it increasing the pool? Is it increasing diversity? Have you heard back from employers about, creating, contributing to their pipeline yet? Anything like that?
Well, yes, we are noticing, and just from the numbers and information that's been provided to us for the participants that are involved, that the participants in pre-apprenticeship programs are, diverse, whether it's people from, underserved communities, whether it's people with disabilities, whether it's women in the trades. We're seeing all types of diversity in these pre-apprenticeship programs.
Wow, that's great. So you mentioned that you checked in with Massachusetts and Wisconsin. I know our friends in Ohio have been doing some recognition of pre-apprenticeship. So you have a sense of whether other states are going to be doing this recognition of a pre-apprenticeship and a set of standards or requirements for pre-apprenticeship? Seems like a smart thing to do. I know our friends in the Office of Apprenticeship in D.C. have some guidance around that, but certainly you all are recognizing them and registering them. So what do you see going on in other states or around the country?
Yeah, I would say that when we did our initial research into who actually had a registered pre-apprenticeship system, there was only a few states, and I've noticed from recent numbers that number has grown.
Yeah.
So, just from, conferences and talking to my fellow apprenticeship directors across the country, pre-apprenticeship is gaining a lot of momentum because of the flexibility and that intentional dialogue from employers and training providers and all the different talent pipelines that are out there. So it is something where, we looked at it as developing, when we develop our apprenticeship programs, developing them separately. I know at least here in Pennsylvania, we're talking about let's do the registered apprenticeship program and the pre-apprenticeship program. Let's build that all together. Let's try and make it as seamless as possible, so we can build as many pathways into employment as possible on the front end.
Okay. So we're going to be going to some questions momentarily. So we'll try to read some off the screen or ask for more. But Eric, before we do that, so what do you think, your policymakers think, the governor's office, what do you think some of your leading businesses think, those who participated in apprenticeship? What is the benefit that they think they're getting or the states are getting from registering these high-quality pre-apprenticeships?
Well, I would say the feedback we get from employers is they actually have a voice in how their applicants or their people that are in these programs, the educations they're getting, right? I mean, part of the thought process was we want to help employers with the candidates that come to them. If they come from these pre-apprenticeship programs, we want them to be educated on the things that the employers want, so they'll be more employable. We hear that there's a certain amount of jobs that are out there that people just aren't qualified to fill, and these pre-apprenticeship programs, from the input from the employers, are help increasing that pool of employable candidates. So from that perspective, I think it's very valuable.
Well, that's fabulous. We keep hearing and seeing great things happening in Pennsylvania, from Philly to Williamsport, all over. And, we think you adding this pre-apprenticeship work on there is really an important model for others to think about. And I guess our advice, and Eric, you can confirm this before we go to some questions, but, if you're listening on this call today and you run a pre-apprenticeship program and you're in a state apprenticeship agency state, I guess they want to check their website or check with the state apprenticeship office on recognition or registration of pre-apprentice?
Yes, I mean we on our website we have the registration information. Also, if you want to contact our office, definitely get in touch with us. People ask, why should we register our pre-apprenticeship program? Well, if it becomes registered, it is part of our workforce development strategy, and that means that you are eligible for workforce development funding opportunities.
Great. And workforce boards, community colleges, community-based organizations, high schools, I would imagine those are some of the people who've submitted registration materials to you.
Yes. Yeah. All of those entities.
Excellent. Well, I want to refer, but Eric, thank you so much. If you can stick around in case any questions come your way, we'll be going into Q&A now. And I did want to say, if you go back one slide, please, those of you on for additional information, at least in terms of federal guidance, the Training and Employment Notice 13-12 and the Training and Employment Guidance Letter, that's government speak, but it's very meaningful documents, sort of outline some information on pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship in terms of federal guidance. States are often follow that guidance, but have a chance to innovate off of that, I'm not even sure what to say about that other than states follow often their own similar rules in guidance on this from the feds. But there's more information about high-quality pre-apprenticeships. And we do know that Ohio, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, North Carolina, Wisconsin, many other states I'm not mentioning here are doing that. So thanks. So we're going to move to some questions right now. And, just a couple of questions that came up. And Jennifer Oddo, if you're still on the line, I think you are. Folks are asking about IBM badges. And then, I imagine these are internal badges or certifications or credentials you have for agile and design thinking. But is there other, what are some other sort of badges or certifications you integrate into either the pre-apprenticeship work or the apprenticeship work?
Right. So out on our IBM Skills Gateway, which is at IBM.com, we do have a significant amount of training that's available for free, training and education. As I'd mentioned, our design thinking and new collar professional skills badges are available. We also have lots of different things around, some cognitive training. We've got a chatbot badge that could be earned. So just some really fun things. And we do leverage some of that training into our own programs as well. So again, just, anytime we know of quality free resources out there, I'd like to promote them, whether it's IBM or other vendors as well.
Okay, great. And Eric, for you, Latasha from Central Texas, hello there. It sounds like they got a great team in Texas, but they're a little overwhelmed by a lot of the materials. So how can a school district get started in pre-apprenticeship programs? And I think school districts are ideally positioned. There is a growing and emerging community of high school-based registered apprenticeship programs, but I also know a lot of high schools are considering a pre-apprenticeship pathway. So, Eric, any advice for Latasha in Central Texas?
My advice would be to look to your strong program areas within your school, your areas of study. Look to see where you can kind of build a foundation and go from there. I know from us, for us, our perspective, there are groups out there that have started pre-apprenticeship programs that did start on that strong foundation, but learned that, hey, there's other kids in their schools that are interested in other things, and that pre-apprenticeship model worked well for them, so they've expanded it. So definitely look to your apprenticeship folks in Texas as to lean on them for their guidance there for any pre-apprenticeship programs, and also intermediaries. There are intermediaries out there that can give you technical assistance to help build your programs.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent suggestion about intermediaries who can do that. And I think Texas is an Office of Apprenticeship State, so you can contact the Department of Labor Regional Office in Dallas. That's some great people there who could give you some advice. You could read those materials that I sent you. If you do have a program of study, I'll just make one up. Let's say it's in healthcare or automotive, and you could organize a pre-apprenticeship, get some local employers involved. What we often recommend to folks is look at where the existing registered apprenticeships are and then work backwards from there. So if there's a automotive registered apprenticeship, within reason, you can sort of build your curriculum and work experiences leading up to that, which then gives students a better opportunity to join the registered program when they advance a little bit in this one.
One quick thing, if I could just add, this
Please.
is Deborah, is if you're a high school that's really interested in pre-apprenticeship, one thing that I would recommend is looking up the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship. And so youth apprenticeships around the country really are focused on in-school, high school students and creating bridges both to post-secondary and to the apprenticeship system. So while some of those are registered apprenticeships, some of them function a lot like a pre-apprenticeship program. And PIA has a really great sort of framework that can help think through the different additional considerations that you have when you're looking at high school programs of study.
Yep. So just Google Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeships, PIA, and it'll probably take you to New America. Could go to our website, which will share that information. Two really interesting questions here. Let's see, my screen's moving. So one is Gilda in North Carolina is talking about the adult ed community, the adult ed population who don't always have access, or entry into registered apprenticeships. Sometimes registered apprenticeships, I know, often require a high school diploma. They require a driver's license. They require certain things. But Eric, have you had any connections with adult ed providers who have developed a pre-apprenticeship program? I think that's a great population in which to structure a pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship readiness program too, whether it's building trades or IT or whatever the occupation. So I'm just wondering if any adult ed organizations have done that work yet.
Yeah, I mean, we've had them from community-based organizations. We've had pre-apprenticeship programs. They're connected to our career and technical centers, and they all have, not all, I'm sorry. Some of them have adult learning as well. So yes, we've had all of those. I mean, the pre-apprenticeship, I know we talk a lot about the youth part of it, but the way we've developed it is that it's for the adult population, out of school youth, in school youth, also incumbent workers. It can be used as an incumbent worker strategy as well. Yep. We tried to make it as flexible as possible when we build it.
That's right. And, with a lot of youth programs nowadays, you don't have to do pre-apprenticeship. You can go to registered if you have yourself very well organized and really good employers connected with. Another interesting question from our friend Don out at Linked Learning Alliance in California. And, again, it's on this youth apprenticeship in high schools and pre-apprenticeship. So you just heard Eric say, the strategy for pre-apprenticeship is really adult focus. You can do it for high schools, or you sort of have two options. You can take your programs of study in high school and organize students on a pre-apprenticeship pathway for high school, or you could try to organize a registered apprenticeship program if you have the right partners in high school. We have some work done and sort of offline. I'm happy to talk to you a little bit deeper about that. But any of you folks, you do have some options at high school. Sometimes the term pre-apprenticeship is mentioned, and all of a sudden a light bulb goes over people's heads and said, oh, it's got to be a youth program. Well, that's not necessarily true nowadays. Totally appropriate for adults, totally appropriate for career changers, totally appropriate for other folks who don't have a connection in to the existing apprenticeship pathways. Let's see. Boy, we're getting a lot of good questions from you guys today. Public workforce system works with all job seekers. How would you promote a pre-apprenticeship to those individuals? So in the WIOA world or the public workforce system, look, there are connections into the workforce. You have WIOA youth dollars, and you have WIOA youth programs that serve students 16 to 20, I think it's 24, or certainly 16 to 21. And so, WIOA youth programs can use WIOA youth dollars to sort of frame a pre-apprenticeship or even a registered program. Likewise, for the adult WIA dollars for either adults or dislocated workers. Obviously, you'd have to follow WIOA rules, get the training cleared on your ETPL list and what have you. But there are workforce boards in the WIOA system across the country that are trying to use some of this work. Hey, Jen, I have a question for you, and I don't know if it's come up because you're focused on adults more than youth, but do you have any thoughts on engagement of parents in pre-apprenticeship, particularly for younger workers?
I do. I think in all the work that we do, whether it's apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship, I think there needs to be more advocacy and education to the parents to help understand that a degree pathway is not the only pathway to getting a good job. So I think as we continue to advocate for these programs, that messaging is very important, and we need to continue to, by any means, get that messaging out there to all to everybody.
Yeah, more than one pathway to the middle class.
Yes.
I also want to thank Joshua Johnson from the great state of Wisconsin. He's volunteered to assist everybody in the United States to help with youth apprenticeships becoming certified pre-apprenticeships. But what Joshua did say on his message to us is that, if people want information about youth apprenticeships becoming certified, I guess in Pennsylvania they're calling them Wisconsin certified pre-apprenticeships, reach out to Joshua Johnson. I hope it's okay to put your name out, or check the Wisconsin website for that information. But Wisconsin has long been a leader in apprenticeship and in youth apprenticeship, and now it sounds like in certifying pre-apprenticeship programs. So thanks for that. Let me see if I've got one other question I can get. There's a lot of IBM specific questions. I'll leave those to Jen and share those with her later. A lot about badging and credentials. I mean, anytime you can incorporate a credential in a pre-apprenticeship program, man, that's going to take this person a long way. See what you can work out with your public workforce system. The last question I'll just talk about really quickly is what partnerships can be used to help pay for the educational living expenses of pre-apprentices who are not enrolled in high school or degree award programs. So Eric, I don't know if there's a stream of funds, although I suppose you could integrate this with your local WIOA agency to see if they would support pre-apprentices and get in the game. But I was just wondering, if there's any other incentives or training dollars that contribute to pre-apprenticeship from what you're saying in PA.
Yeah, for an example of one is we did an IT pre-apprenticeship that was connected with AmeriCorps, and they, because of the nature of the project, were able to put a stipend to that program for the individuals going through the program. So that's one way. If a pre-apprenticeship program is registered in Pennsylvania and connected to a registered apprenticeship program, it is able to be put on the eligible training provider list, which can, have funds for that ITA or individual training account part for eligible participants.
That's great. So there's a lot of new and interesting things going on in the world of pre-apprenticeship. As I opened up with, the highway of pre-apprenticeship is littered with some really mediocre programs. Let's see if we can raise the bar on those programs and have better pathways into the promise of registered apprenticeship, which is good wages, good job retention, and excellent career pathways. So I want to thank my cohort at JFF, Deborah Kobus, for spending so much time in developing the framework that we talked about today, and that's available on our website if you go to the Center for Apprenticeship or jff.org. I want to thank Jennifer Oddo, who's done some amazing work. IBM is doing some amazing work in leadership in the apprenticeship world. Who would have thunk that 5 years ago? And Eric, clearly Pennsylvania is doing some innovation and some really interesting things across the state in advancing apprenticeship. So stay tuned to JFF. Go to our website and sign up for newsletters and updates from JFF on the Center for Apprenticeship. And Horizons is a conference we do every 2 years. Excuse me, June 9th and 10th, 2020 in New Orleans. Keep an eye out for that. That'll be a good one. With that, I'm losing my voice. I'm going to close it out and say thank you and sign up for our newsletter. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks.